Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, mgrahamsews. This video tutorial is for this gorgeous bag. It's called the Reena Handheld Bag and it's by Tobistylx. This bag is gorgeous. It's also a really quick sew considering how it looks, but it's a pretty quick sew. I was really shocked at how fast it came together. And it's a really fun sew too. And I love that there's some different techniques that we may not have seen before, so you're getting to learn some new techniques. Now, before I discuss some of the features of the bag, there's just a couple of things I want to go over. First of all, this tutorial is filmed like a sew-along. That means there's no parts are sped up, no parts that are cut out. It's all done in real time. So you see me sew this whole bag. Now, there are times where I go off camera because, for example, the handles, there's two of them. You only need to see me create one and sew one. So I sew one on camera and then I pause the camera and go off and sew the other one. I just feel that that just helps with the length of the tutorial because they can get really long, and I don't feel that you need to sit there and watch me sew it a second time when I've already shown you how to do it. The other thing is I did make a boo-boo and I do correct it in the video, so you'll see how I corrected it, but I did do a boo-boo and I didn't follow the pattern, so do follow the pattern, where I top stitched this zipper panel before I added my magnetic snap. And it was because in my mind I was thinking I was using a different snap as I was top stitching, totally forgetting, no, I'm using magnetic snaps. So I ended up top stitching and then realizing I need to install my magnetic snap. So I had to unpick some of these stitches, pull them through, tie it off, and I had to install my magnetic snap, then restitch it. I do show you how I fixed my error, and I apologize for that. So if you're sewing this, definitely install the magnetic snaps if you're using a magnetic snap when it says to in the pattern. But if you're using one that has a nice finish on the one side, so a snap that's put together with a press, you can top stitch first, then install your snap, which is what I was thinking in my head. So definitely follow the pattern, install the magnetic snap when it says, then top stitch around the entire panel. So I wanted to bring that to your attention now before we get started so that you're aware of it before you follow along and make the same boo-boo I made. However, I do show you how to fix that. Also, there is the Reena tote bag, which is just a slightly different style, and it's because it doesn't have this zipper panel here like this. So it does have a recessed zipper, so it would look like this with a recessed zipper. It just doesn't have the panels that come over the sides and clip in place. So the construction for that bag is exactly the same all the way through, including when you get up to the part where we install our zipper. And I do mention that in the pattern. So you have your zipper panels, you create your zipper panels, you sew in your zipper, and then you have your zipper panels that are sewn in here. You just won't be making this part here, this recessed zipper here with this magnetic snaps on the end. So everything is the same except for when you go to create those zipper panels, which we have done those before and I can link to another tutorial. I'm not sure if I'm going to get time to film that tutorial. That's why I wanted to mention it, but it is done the same. The zipper panels are done as we have done them before, and then you just sew them in the same way we sewed this in. You're going to sew it. So all the construction, exterior, base, everything is all the same. The lining, it's just this. You're not creating this zipper panel. Instead, you're creating just a regular traditional zipper panel for a recessed zipper. That's the only difference. Everything else will be the same, and it won't have the ends that come over the sides like this on that tote bag. So it's a little bit of a different style, but all the same construction. So now let's discuss the features of this bag. You know there's the zipper panel, but you have the exterior of the bag, which has this center panel here, and then you have the two sides, which I did in white, and then the black on each side. I really like this because this frames this center panel here. You could do embroidery, you could do some heat transfer vinyl, you could even do a panel here, and then this kind of acts like a frame, which I really like. The sides are cinched in with the zipper panel here. You also have this pretty little tassel. You could use that on your keys, you could clip it here, you can clip it to your zippers if you want, whatever you want. If you don't want to add it, you don't have to, because if you don't have the hardware. When you open up the zippers, if you leave the sides clipped, it keeps the bag nice and tight, but if you unclip them, that helps open the bag nice and wide. When you look inside the bag, you can see it's very roomy. You have a zipper pocket, and on the other side, you have a slip pocket. And if you're an intermediate or advanced sewist, you could add some extra pockets in here if you like having pockets, or you can just leave the pockets the way they are. You could even add an extra pocket outside if you prefer. On the bottom of the bag, we do have some purse feet, which is great for keeping the bag off surfaces, so it keeps the bottom of the bag nice and clean. And then we just clip our sides again, clip everything together, and move this down, and there it is. There's our bag, and that's how your bag will look when it's all done. So let's get started making our Reena Handheld Bag. So the very first thing you'll want to do is read through the entire pattern. This is very important for a couple of reasons. First, it familiarizes you with the pattern so you know how the bag is going to be constructed. So when you get to a certain step, you'll remember some of the steps that are further ahead, and it may help make it easier for you. Also, it's important because oftentimes designers give information regarding different interfacings to use, maybe different materials. So if you're using a vinyl instead of a quilting cotton, you may need to cut that pattern piece a little bit different. So it's very important to read through the pattern and make note of these before you begin cutting out your fabrics and your interfacings, because sometimes too, even interfacings are different depending on the materials you are using. Once you've read through the entire pattern, you can gather all your supplies, you can cut out your pattern pieces and cut out your fabric. I've gone ahead and cut all my pattern pieces out, and I'm using a vinyl and a quilting cotton for this pattern. I also went ahead and gathered all my hardware and I put it in this little Ziploc bag, and I've also cut my zippers to length because I did read through the pattern. I know exactly what length of zippers I've needed. So I just put it all in this little baggie here so that it keeps it all together. I've also gone ahead and made some marks because there are some marks that need to be made on some of the pattern pieces. Now, I've done this because I don't show any pattern pieces, no rulers, no measuring, nothing on camera. I don't even give seam allowances. And that is for the protection of the designer, but also because I film during testing, and oftentimes things can change during testing. So this way, if anything changes, my tutorial here is not affected and you'll be able to follow along. So you will need to have your pattern open beside you or on the device that you're watching this tutorial on so that you'll know what the measurements are and you'll know what the seam allowances and where to make marks that are needed in the pattern. So because I've read through, I've already made some of the marks. So as you can see here on my C piece, which I always mark what the pattern piece is so that when we get to the step and this pattern piece is used, I know exactly which pattern piece to grab. But I've already gone ahead and made the marks there that are needed on that piece. And the other thing I did was, for example, this tassel. I've gone ahead and cut the tassel out so that I'm ready to go and I don't have to stop the camera. I've also made my cuts and my marks on my F piece here. So depending on which way you're doing this, you'll have an F piece that may look like this, or your piece will look a little bit different. So I'm doing this for non-materials that you cannot leave raw edge, so non-raw edge materials. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I was going to do it where you can leave it raw edged, but I thought for those of you who are using materials that may not be able to be left raw edged, it might be good for you to see how to do this on camera. So I did decide to do that for this tutorial. So once you have all your pattern pieces done, cut out, and your interfacings that need to be fused. So you'll see I have some interfacings here that are not fused yet. They are not to be fused until later in the steps, but I do have them cut out and ready to go. Once you have that, we're all ready to go. So let's get started. So the first thing you need, as I mentioned just a bit ago, is your piece C, and if you haven't, you'll need to make those marks on pattern piece C as given in the pattern. So there's a measurement given, and you'll need to make those marks on the measurement given. So we'll need to take your C pieces and your main panel A, so it looks like these. And another thing that might be helpful for you is to have them so that you know where's the top and where the bottom is. So you can mark a little T, so I'll show you. I often do this, and I didn't do it on this because I knew where I put my letter A where the top was, but you can just mark a little T. It might be hard to see, but I just put a little T right here, and I also marked that it was an A, and that's how I knew which way was up and which way was down. But you can do that, and that'll help you know which way that the pattern pieces go when you go to put them together, because sometimes if the pattern piece is similar in shape, you can often get it turned the wrong way, and then you've stitched and you have to unpick your stitching, so it just saves you a bit of time. So we only need one for now, so I'm going to move one of my A away and some of my C pieces out of the way here. We'll start with your first A piece and one of your C pieces. So this is the middle panel C and your main panel A. So you're going to take main panel A, place it right sides up on your table. You're going to take the middle panel C and place it right sides down on top of the main panel A, and you're going to line up one of the raw side edges. So if you do the right or the left, it doesn't matter. I'm going to start with the left. You're going to line up those long raw edges and use some clips to hold it in place. So I like to line up the top and bottom corners, and then I clip it the rest of the way, making sure that raw edge is aligned. Move my hardware out of the way. And then we're going to sew on the line that you drew in step A, she says. So make sure you're using a stitch length that you like to use for stitching your bags together. And stitch right on top of that line, and don't forget to back stitch as well. Trim your threads. Now we're going to fold this seam towards the main panel A and top stitch on main panel A using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So what that means is you take this, it's like this right now where we're looking at the wrong side of C, flip it, and that'll push all that seam towards the A piece. Now if you're using materials here that you can press with your iron, you can take this and give this a press with your iron. I am not, so I'm just finger pressing. Bring my stitch length to the length I like to use for top stitching. Trim your threads. Return your stitch length as well back to the length you used for stitching. So there we go. That's how that looks so far. Now we're going to take one of our B pieces. So right here, we're going to take a B piece and we're going to match the long edge of the middle C to one side panel B, and we're going to clip them right sides together. So I know this is B. I'm going to remove my little sticker that I have there. And we're going to take B and we're going to match it to the side edge here of C. So you're matching up those edges, clip it in place. And then you'll sew on that line again that you drew, so you'll have that second line that we didn't stitch on right here. We're going to sew right on top of that. Make sure your stitch length is back to the length you like to use for stitching your bag together. Now we're going to sew this, we have to top stitch, sorry. So now what we need to do is fold this seam toward the side panel B. So you're doing the opposite of what we did the first time. So when we flip this side panel over, leave that seam allowance so it's going towards, so you can see my white here is going towards the B. And give it a press. And then we're going to top stitch on top of B. So I've pushed the seam towards B, and I'm going to top stitch on B now. Oops. Trim your threads. Always trim your threads. Return your stitch length, and that's how that looks so far. So we have A, C, and B, and that's what it looks like so far. Now we need to repeat all those steps to attach the other side. So we need to attach C and B to the other side, and then we need to repeat that all for the remaining C A and B. So I'm going to take my C, so I'm going to show you this one more time on the opposite side, then I'll go off camera and I'll construct the other panel. So again, with A, right sides up, you're going to take C and place it pretty sides together with A, lining up that long side edge on the right. If you already sewn on the right side instead of the left, then you're putting this on the left side. Clip it in place, and then we'll sew right on top of that line we drew. So stitch right on top of that line you drew, all the way down. Then we'll press this. So that it goes towards A. So we're taking this and we're pressing the seam allowance towards the A panel. So you'll see when I flip this over, you can see it's going towards the A, all the bulk. I've increased my stitch length for top stitching. So now we have C attached to the right side. Now I need to grab one of my B pieces, so my B side panel, and I'm going to place it on top of this, lining up the side long edges of C and B. Excuse me. And then again, we will stitch directly on that line we drew. And that line just helps us keep a nice, accurate seam allowance. And I forgot to return my stitch length. Now we're going to press that seam towards the B panel. And then again, top stitch that B panel. Just clipping all my threads. And that's how it looks. So you have B, a piece of C, you can just see a little bit of C, then you have your A, then your C, and then your B, and it'll look like that. So I'm going to go off camera, I'm going to construct the other panel for the other side of the bag, and it's going to look exactly like this. Then I'll come back and we will continue on. All right, so both my panels are now constructed. Now there's just some marks that you need to make, and the measurements are given in the pattern. So you're going to make it on the wrong side. So I've already gone ahead and done that because I didn't want to have to stop the camera again and do it. But it's a measurement from the top of your panel, so that's why it's going to be important to have that T up here. From the top of the panel down, and it's across the whole edge, and I had to use chalk and a pen because I'm using the black and the white, so I need it to show up. So I've gone ahead and made those marks on both the main exteriors. Now, once you have those marks made, you can put one off to the side. We're going to work with just one of our main exteriors, and there's chalk all over it. And we need to grab our base panel. So I got that. Now, I only marked the centers on the one edge. I'm going to mark the center here. So I'm just going to fold it in half. And you know what, I can actually do this off camera just to make sure. just marking my centers. So you just want to mark the center of the base panel. So that you have the centers marked. So you'll see I've marked the centers on the short edge here and on the long edges. So you want to make those marks. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take the base panel and we're going to place it pretty sides touching against our main exterior. So have your main exterior right side up. You're going to take your base panel and lay it right sides together, and you're going to line up your center marks. And if you don't have your center marks done on your main panel, what you'll want to do is take it, fold it together, fold it so that your C's match where we drew those lines, fold it in half, creates a crease there, and then that's how you can get your center mark. So again, exterior is right sides up, base goes right sides together. Line up your center marks. Clip it together all the way along that edge. And I'm just folding it to make sure that I have it centered right. And this is how I'm looking. I'm just making sure when I fold it in half and I have the side edges here of my base meet, do the side edges of my C panel meet? And it does. And that's how you'll know that you have everything perfectly centered, because you really want to make sure everything is nicely centered. Now we're going to sew this here along the bottom across the whole base using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And there is some bulk there, depending on the materials you've used. And if you're finding that your machine is having a hard time, try a humper jumper. If it's having a hard time getting over the bulk here where we have all these seams, try using a humper jumper, a walking foot, maybe even a bigger needle might help. So just give those all a try. So once we have that all all stitched together along that bottom edge, so I've just stitched, you can see it better there, just across the base, nowhere else. You're going to take the panel and flip it and top stitch the base with the seams towards the base panel. So right now I have this so that it looks like this. I'm seeing the wrong side of my base. If I just flip my base down, my seam is already going towards the base panel. There's nothing I need to do. So I'm going to top stitch across that base. Just across the base, you're not stitching across anything else. And again, if you have a hard time going over that bulk, use a humper jumper, a bigger needle. You can even use a seam whacker, so a rubber mallet or any kind of mallet that you have, and you can hammer those seams to flatten them. That'll also help. So I've top stitched across that edge. Now we need to repeat these steps for the other side. So take your completed exterior, lay it right sides up, and you got to get that base so that it is wrong sides up. So it's going to be right sides together. Line up the center marks, clip it together. Again, they're pretty sides touching, so the base is right sides together with your exterior. And I'm just going to double check to make sure everything is all nicely lined up. So I'm just folding it together. We're good. Then I'm going to stitch this together using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now I'm going to press the seam so that it goes towards the base, towards the base, just cutting my threads. And then I'm going to top stitch this seam on the base. Across, and I'm just going to return my stitch length before I forget. And that's what we have right now. We have this piece that looks like this. Now there are some marks that we need to make for our purse feet. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to make the marks for my purse feet, and then I will come back and we will continue on. All right, so I have the marks made using the measurements given in the pattern. So you're measuring from the raw side edge of your base and the edge here where we attached the base. So right where that folded edge of the base is. So you're from here and here, I'll do it this way, from the side edge here and the bottom edge and up using the measurements given in the pattern. Once you have those measurements made, we're going to use our washers. Now, you may have a different style of purse feet to be using than what I'm using. So you'll want to follow your manufacturer's instructions for installing your purse feet because it may be different than what I have. But we just use our washer to make the marks for the purse feet. And I'm centering it on those marks we made. I'm just going to do all the markings now. It's hard because I'm using chalk, so it's wiping off as I'm doing this. Then I'm going to take my seam ripper and I'm going to cut those holes that I've made carefully. Now, if you're worried about pushing the seam ripper too far, what you can do is where you've made the marks, right at the top of the marks, put your pin in right at the top of the mark and come out the other side at the top of the mark, just like that. Then what you'll do is using your seam ripper, you'll make the opening and see how my pin is stopping my seam ripper from going any further? That'll just stop you from accidentally seam ripping too far. So that's just a little tip for that. I'm going to brush off. I was actually going to take my sweater off, but I've been needing it to get the chalk off. Also with chalk, if you're finding it doesn't wipe off as nicely, a little bit of water on a cloth will help get it off. I'm also going to make the slits on some interfacing. And I'm not drawing the lines, I'm just sort of guessing where it is because I've installed enough of these. I sort of know the distance for how far apart they are, and this is just for some extra strength there. Now we're going to install our purse feet using, well, at the mark, sorry, that we've made. And I'm just trying to get this apart. So I push the purse feet through the slits that I made. Then I use my interfacing, then a washer. And normally I like to wrap the purse feet around, but these prongs are kind of long and they're going to be a little bit hard for me to do. So I'm going to press them open. We only need 3 more purse feet. I can put these back in the bag. So second one. You don't have to add purse feet if you don't want. I do like having them because it keeps the base of the bag off a floor or the ground if you're outside and you put your purse down on the ground, or even on tables. If you put your purse on a table, I've had things where I've put my purse on a table and something has spilt on the table, and because I've had purse feet, the bottom of the bag didn't get wet. Now, the other thing I like to do is add a bit of tape over the prongs, and I will really want to do this here because I have these open and I've had feet fall out when I've pressed them open, but the tape tends to hold it in place a little bit. We're also going to be putting some interfacing on top of this after, which will help hold everything in place as well. So when I fuse that interfacing, it'll stick everything down. So I just put some duct tape over it. You can also use some of your woven interfacing over top of it too to help hold it in place. And that also protects anything from the other side so these prongs don't rub and accidentally poke holes through things. There we go. That's how it looks like with the purse feet. I know mine are black, so you can barely see them, but there you go. You can see them there. So now we have our purse feet attached. We're going to take this and place this off to the side for now. Now we're going to work on our handles. And what we need to do with our handles is there's a line that you need to draw down the entire length of the handle, so in the center down the entire length, on both your handles. So I've already done that. Now what we're going to do is take some double-sided tape, and I'm using a wider double-sided tape, but if you have a smaller or thinner double-sided tape, you want to place the double-sided tape on both sides of the line. I'm using a thicker one, so I'm going to go right down the center of the line. Press it in place, remove your paper backing. Oops. Remove your paper backing, and then we're going to fold each long raw edge in to meet that center mark. However, if you're using, she says in the pattern, if you're using vinyl, cork, or leather, leave a small gap in the middle, and this is something I always do as well, and it just helps prevent the bulk here in the center seam when we go to fold this in half again. So you're going to leave a tiny gap, about 1/16 of an inch in the center. And this is something I always do as well. I always suggest to leave that little bit of a gap. So you don't want them touching, you want a small gap. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So you can see, I know it's probably a little bit hard to see, but you can kind of see that mine don't touch. I'm looking at the camera if you're wondering why I'm making a face. I have a bright light in my face here, and then I'm trying to look at my screen. But you can see there's a bit of a gap. Oh, there you go, you can tell there. So there's just a small gap, not very big, just a small one. And then what else I like to do is take another piece of double-sided tape, and this just helps prevent shifting before I fold it in half again. Now I'm going to fold it in half again, enclosing those raw edges. And I'm lining up those edges I folded. So just like that. So now where that edge is that we folded into the center, there's no bulk here in the middle, but I folded them into the center and then folded it in half again, and now I have no raw edges except for on the ends. Now you can use some clips to help hold this in place because we're going to sew both long edges using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So use your favorite length that you like to use when you stitch a strap or a handle. The other side. Now, to avoid twisting, what you want to do is start sewing at the same side or edge that you started sewing on previously, and that just helps prevent any twisting in the strap. Trim all your threads, and now your strap will look like this, or your handle will look like that. We need to repeat that for the other handle, so I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to repeat that for the other handle, and then I will come back and we will attach our handles to our panel. While I'm off, there are some markings, which you can also do as well, so you can pause the camera. There's some markings that you need to make from the middle panel, so where your middle panel C and your A panel meet, right there is where you want to measure over from using the measurement given in the pattern. So right where A and C meet, you're measuring over, going towards the center on both the left and the right side, so going towards the center, and make a mark. And that's for where the handles are going to be placed. So you'll also want to make those marks, because I have those marks done right now. Once we have that done, we'll baste our handles in place. So I'm going to create the second handle and then come back and we will attach them to our bag. So both my handles are now constructed. Now we're going to attach them to our main panel using those measurements I had mentioned for you to make. So we're going to place these to the inside of the measurement, so going towards the center. Now your handle has the seam from where you press the two edges together, and then you have the nice folded seam. I want my folded seam to be in the center of the bag. So I'm going to pin them there with that center folded, nice folded edge towards the center of the bag. You want to bring the handle up and around and make it meet that mark, as well as lining up the raw edges. You want to make sure it's not twisted when you're bringing it up. So right now my handle is not twisted. And it lines up, the side edge of my handle lines up with that mark I made. I'm going to repeat that on the other side. So lining up the raw edge of the handle with the raw edge of the bag, and then the side edge lines up with that mark I made. Pin it in place, and then we're going to baste these handles in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. There's one handle. So I have one handle all attached. Now I'm going to repeat that on the other side. I ran out of bobbin, so I'm just going to change my bobbin quickly. At least it wasn't while I was constructing an important part of the bag. There we go. Now we need to cut all those threads. So trim all your threads. just like that. Now we have all our threads trimmed and our handles attached. Now we need to assemble our exterior, and in the pattern it is recommended to use foam. So I'm just going to grab my interfacing that I have for these pieces. It is recommended to use foam if you're using something that's lightweight. Now I have a quilting cotton here, so that's a little bit lightweight. So I am going to use the foam, and you want to fuse it to the wrong side. So you're taking your foam and you're fusing it to the main exterior, aligning one long edge to this line that we drew here. So remember that line we drew from the top down? You're putting it there and you're centering it as well. So you want to center it on your panel and you want to fuse it in place. Now I'm using a sew-in foam, so I'm going to use some double-sided tape to help hold it down. Once I get that put in place, so I say this is where it needs to be, it's centered, I'm then going to take my main interfacing and put it on top of my foam and fuse that in place. And I will need to go off camera to do this because I will need to use my iron to fuse this in place. So again, you take your foam, move your handle out of the way, place your foam down, centering it on your panel. Then you take your interfacing and you fuse that on top of your foam just like that. So I'm going to go off camera, I'm going to go attach my foam, fuse this interfacing in place, and then I will come back and we will construct the bag. So that interfacing is all attached and fused in place. So as I mentioned, I used some double-sided tape to hold my foam in place, and I fused my Decoville Heavy to my foam. Once we sew the bag together, the foam, even though I use double-sided tape, will help stay in place once we get the bag all constructed. Now we need to construct the bag. So flip it over so you're looking at the right side, and you're going to take the bag and place them so they are right sides together for the front exteriors. You'll clip along the side edges, so pin it or clip it in place. Do this on both the side edges, and then we're going to sew the sides using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So we'll sew these two side edges using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And if your presser foot is too large and doesn't get an accurate seam allowance, switch out to a zipper foot. That way there you can get right close to your interfacings and not have to worry about wonky stitching or anything. I'm stitching right along beside the interfacing without stitching over it. Now we need to take the side seam here and center it onto the short edge of the base panel. So I already have the center marked on my base panel. So press that side seam open and line up the center of that side seam with that mark on your base panel. Line them up, clip it in place, and then clip all the way along the rest of the edge. And as you can see, I didn't quite fuse my interfacing here. So I'm just going to pause the camera. I'm going to fuse this interfacing because it's lifting. I guess I didn't fuse that side very well. I'm going to go fuse this and I'll be right back. All right, so interfacing is now fused, and I accidentally touched my iron along this tape here, so it kind of melted it a bit, but that's okay. I'll clean that off after. Again, centering that side seam with that center mark on the short edge of the base panel. Now this is where you'll definitely want to switch out to a zipper foot. It'll just make it a lot easier to sew this edge because you have all this interfacing and everything else that you're going to be wanting to get around. And just to make sure you keep an accurate seam allowance. So we're sewing from one corner to the other using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So I'm going to switch to a zipper foot now. Right here. And we will sew along that edge. So I'm going to sew from the previous stitching all the way over to the other side, to the stitching on the other side. And again, this zipper foot will help me get close to my interfacing without stitching over the interfacing. Make sure you keep that middle seam from the side pressed open. Stuck here. Just checking inside, feeling to make sure that it's closed, there's no holes. So you're just going from where you stitched previously all the way across that side edge, so a bottom edge here, all the way across. And if it's easier, you can also stitch on, put your bag this way and stitch with it so that the panel is the wrong side up. The reason why I'm doing it where I'm looking at it from this side and sewing on this side is so that I can make sure I'm not sewing over any of that interfacing. You don't want to stitch over any of the interfacing. I think I went a little wonky here, so I'm just going to re-stitch over it. There we go. All right, so again, we've stitched from one side to the other, starting and stopping where your previous stitching was. Now we're going to turn the bag right sides out. Ow, I just bent a nail back. Ow. That hurt. This is also another chance where you can look and see how your bag looks and see if you've caught all the corners and everything, which I did. Such a cute little bag. Isn't this really cute? Super cute. All right, so now we need to attach our base panel interfacing. So I'm going to go off camera to go do that, and you're just going to place it in, I'm trying to find it, there it is. Place it inside and then fuse it in place. Now, if you have a small iron, you may want to use your small iron to get in there to fuse that in place. So go ahead and do that. So you just put the base interfacing inside and fuse it in place, and then your exterior bag is all done, and we will move on to the next part of our bag. So I'm going to go fuse that in place, and then I'll come back and we will add the female ends of the magnetic snaps, and then we will continue on. So that base interfacing is now fused in place inside my bag. So we have the interfacing all around. Now we need to make some marks from the top edge here on the side down, and there's a measurement given in the pattern for where you're going to make that mark. So you can see my mark here. Another thing I did was I stitched these open, the side seams here. I stitched them so that they're open just at the top. I basted them open so that it keeps them for when we go to turn this down, when we go to birth the bag, or not birth the bag, do the drop-in lining. These are pressed open now for me because I've used vinyl. So I've made that mark. That's the mark that we need for installing our female half of our magnetic snaps. So you'll want to get out the female half of your magnetic snaps now. The two of them, you'll put one on both sides. Now, using your washer, you'll want to make a mark for where the prongs are going to go. And you don't want to put it right through the center seam here. You want it to be on each side of the seam, not through the seam, because you don't want to break your stitches. So line up the center of your washer with that side seam, and then the slits will be on either side. And we'll use our seam ripper to cut the slits. So I've made my slits there. I'm going to repeat that for the second side. So again, lining up the washer with that mark I made, but the center of the washer is going with the center of the seam. So there's the center of my seam, and there's the mark. Wrong side. I'm just going to use my little scissors to cut the slit a little bit more, just because there is some interfacing that I had to go through. There we go. On both sides. So I'm just using my little scissors to cut the slits a little bit more through the interfacing, because we are going through that interfacing on the side here as well. I'm just taking my time so I don't cut anything that I don't want cut. There we go. Now we're going to install the magnetic snap. So my slits go through the interfacing here as well. So it goes through your main panel interfacing as well, which is nice because it'll add that extra security in those areas. So I've got the prongs pushed through. Just trying to put the washer on. It's hard because we're competing with a bag that's already constructed. Just take your time. Now I'm folding my prongs inwards. And I will add a bit of tape over these prongs as well, so you can see that's the, can you see that? Yeah, you can see the magnetic snap installed there, and that's how it looks on the exterior. So now with the other side, there we are. Okay, there we go. And I tried to press that seam open as well as I was doing that. Tried to have the seam open where the washer is. Some more tape. I'm just putting it over the washer, just to help protect the washer, over the prongs, sorry, just to help protect the prongs. And like I said, I find the tape sort of helps hold it in place. So there it is on the side. I'm trying to find the angle so you can see one, you can see the other, and the tape inside to cover the prongs. Now we'll put this off to the side. We're going to continue on with our zipper panel. And as I mentioned, there are the two options. I'm doing the option that has it so that you can use material that frays. So if you're not using a non-fraying material, you can do this method. If you're using a fraying material, you'll want to follow the steps for that. But I'm showing you this one because I figured this is just a little bit better for a tutorial so that you can see how it's done. So what you need to do is there's a bunch of markings you need to make from the pattern piece and transfer them onto your panel option, your panel F. So you'll want to make the mark down the center and the little side marks here, and then you'll cut them. So you'll see mine are cut. You also have the center marks you need to make. So you want to make your center marks as well as these little marks here. You want to transfer those and cut those out as well. And then there's marks like I made that you have to make to these little marks all the way up, down, and then back down the other side. So you want to make those marks and cut everything as per the instructions in the pattern so that we can start constructing our zipper panel. Now what we're going to do is just want to get to where we are. Take some double-sided tape, and you're going to fold these edges. So you have this area here in the center. So you see this area here in the center where you cut, not that area. We're just folding all the way up this edge, up this pointed edge, down this other side pointed edge, and to there. So we're going to put some double-sided tape there. Where is the end? There it is. So put some double-sided tape along the edge. Just up to those marks. All right, so now that we have that all taped, and I'm only going to show you how to do one of these, and then I'll go off camera and I'll tape up the other one so that you don't have to sit and watch me do this twice. Remove the paper backing from your double-sided tape on one of the edges or one of the sides. All right, so we have the paper backing removed from this one edge here. Now I'm going to fold these edges in to meet those lines that we made. So I'll start with these two lines here. There we go. I've got those two sides folded in. Now we're going to fold these edges in. Now you may need to add a bit more double-sided tape here. So I'm going to do that. Because we need this edge going to cut that pokey corner there. And then see right here how you have a bit, I don't know if it's going to be easy to see, but see right there I have a bit that sticks out. I need to trim that. So just trim that up so that it becomes even like that. So see how I trimmed it up? I didn't trim it right up to the corner here because I don't want my raw edges showing, but you see how it's even? And I'll see if I can get closer. So see how I trimmed it there? That's what you want to do. You don't want to trim it right up to that corner, but kind of on an angle because you want that to still stay in place. And you want to keep your raw edges hidden. So give everything a nice press and then repeat that for the other side now. So let's take all our paper off our double-sided tape. Oops, off our double-sided tape. It's sticking to my nail. Fold in these longer edges. And again, fold in that longer edge. Just like that. And fold up one edge to meet that line. Trim off that little piece there that's not even right now. Add another strip of double-sided tape, just a small piece. And then fold it. And remember, we have that little piece that pokes off there, so we need to trim that. Just like that. And then you have your nice folded edges. Nothing sticks out. And later when we top stitch this, that'll help hold everything down as well. Just making sure. There we go. So now that's all pressed in to meet those lines I made. So you see the lines I drew? It's all pressed on both edges. Now we need to repeat that for this second piece. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to repeat that for the second piece, and then I'll come back and we will continue with making our zipper panel. So both of the zipper panels are now pressed and held down with some double-sided tape, and that is how we do that when you're using material that can fray. Now we need to grab our zipper. We're going to separate it. First, make sure it's cut to the length that's given in the pattern. You want to make sure that it's that length. I'm going to mark the center of my zipper because I want it to line up. So I'm marking the center there on my panel, and I'm going to mark the center of my zippers because, like I said, I want them to line up when I put them in. It's not really a huge deal, but it's just easier when I put the zipper pulls on, because you'll notice there's no zipper pulls on these yet. So I'm just folding it in half. And marking the center of the zipper. All right. Now what we're going to do is take one of the zippers and one of the zipper panels. So have your zipper panel right sides up, and you're going to align one long edge of your zipper with the center of the opening. So zipper will be right sides down against the right side of the zipper panel. Clip it in the center, just like that. So you see here's the opening, and I'm lining up the long raw edge of the zipper. So the zipper teeth are going towards this little piece here that's cut out that we didn't press. Clip it in place all the way along the whole edge. So now that it's clipped, we're going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern along the zipper. So you can flip it over and you can stitch from this side if you want. I know where I'm starting, so we're starting and stopping where this cutout is at the top that went across, that small little cutout. That's where we're starting when we stitch. So you want to start there. And if you have to, use a zipper foot so you can get close to your zipper if you need to, if your presser foot that you have on your machine is too large. So I'm just sewing away, keeping the other side of the zipper panel out of the way. I'm not sewing on this side at all. I don't want to hit it, so I just keep it out of the way. So just move it out of the way. And again, we're sewing all the way up to where that cutout is. Back stitch at start and stop. And there it is. One side of the zipper is attached. Now we're going to repeat that for the other side. So again, line up our center marks. And I can see right now if my zipper lines up, which it does. Again, it's not super important. We have some overhang so that we can put on the zipper and we can tuck the zipper in later. But I just find it's easier when everything's nice and even to get my zippers on, or my zipper pulls on, sorry. All right, and again, starting at that cutout, to the end where that other cutout is. It's an interesting way to sew this zipper panel. So there you see it. We have the zipper sewn to the right side. Now what we need to do is place the second zipper panel right sides together with the first one that we already sewed the zippers to. I'm going to clip in the center here, just on the outside edges first. Now we need to clip in the center. So clip your centers together. Different way to make a zipper panel. It's quite interesting. So we're going to clip all the way along, adding a clip up there. I'll show you how it looks once I get it all clipped. Oh, I didn't need to take that off. just making sure that where these cutouts are line up. That's kind of funny that that went right back in the bowl. And then I'll clip this edge here. So you're just lining up the edges in the center. And as I said, I'll show you how it looks once I get it all clipped. So your center is what we're clipping together here. So you want those all lined up in the center. And I did put some clips on the end just to help hold it, but it's the center that we're clipping right now together. So now what we're going to do is sew on top of those previous stitches that we made. So right on top of those previous stitches is what you're going to sew on. And that's going to stitch this zipper panel in place, this second one that we just added. So keep that second side out of the way. You're only sewing through one side at a time. And again, if you need to switch to a zipper foot, go ahead and do that. I probably should have for this side. A little bit off. I'm going to switch to my zipper foot and stitch back over where I went a little bit off on that one side. It's because I'm trying to hold everything. Here was nice and perfect. It's just at the beginning there where it kind of went a little off. All right, trim any threads. Now we're going to repeat that for the other side. So stitching right on top of those previous stitches. All right, now what we need to do is push one zipper panel through the space in the center. So you're going to push one of these through. So they're going to become wrong sides together, and both will have the right sides out. And I'm going to add a clip on the end here just to help hold it in place. And what's nice is there's some double-sided tape that I can feel here that's sort of helping hold it together. So I'm flipping it out, I'm lining up these sides here at the top. Some of these clips are hard for me to open. So you're just flipping it so that everything is wrong sides together. And I'm adding clips to hold it in place. So clipping it all the way along. Make sure those folded edges all line up. Make sure these raw edges here line up. our zipper pull. And we're going to be adding 2 zipper pulls to this. Now, if you wanted, I don't see why you couldn't just use one. Just know that when you open it, you'll only have one zipper to open. But if you really wanted to, you could just use one. I'm probably going a bit excessive on the clips, but I want to make sure that nothing shifts on me. If you're using a quilting cotton here, you can take this to your iron and press this. You can already see how nice this is looking, and we're not even done. Now you may be wondering about these edges here where there's raw edges. Don't worry about that. We're going to be taking care of that later on in some of the steps. Those will be concealed. They're not going to stay like that. All right. So that's how it's looking so far. So you'll notice that we have our zipper tape, oops, sticking out the ends so that we can get our 2 pulls on. And then that's how it looks from the right side. So we have all these raw edges that are concealed within the zipper panel. I didn't put a clip there, so I'm going to add a little clip here right on the corner. Now we need to grab our zipper pulls. So we're going to install these onto our zipper tape. Make sure that your zipper is not twisted when you're installing these. And it might feel a little bit wonky. I might have to do this without my little tool here. Yeah. I'm going to have to do this without my tool. There's not enough zipper tape. So I'm just doing this with my hands. Oops. Make sure you're putting your pull on the right way. You want your pull to be on the right side. My hands are just not working today. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. It's been a long time since I've done this with just my hands. All right, I'm going to pause the camera. I'm going to go install these zipper pulls. I'm going to try to use this a bit. You don't need to sit here and watch me do this. So I'm going to go do that. Maybe a suggestion is have your zipper tape a little bit longer and then you can trim it down to size after. That might actually help make it easier if you're like me and you have a hard time with your hands, because it's just hard for me to hold everything. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to go install my pulls and I'll come back. I do have a link that I'll put in the description for how I use this and attach my zipper pulls. So I will add that to the description of the video. So I'm going to go add my pulls and then I will come back and we will continue on. Okay, so I couldn't use my handy zipper helper, but that's okay. I just did it the old way of putting it on. So now I'm just removing the clips because we need to take the zipper tape and tuck it up between these layers. So you just push it back through the layers, add your clips again. Get everything all lined up. And then on the other side, get it pushed through your layers. Just like that. So see how it's between the layers there? There we go. So now it's between the layers. We have 2 zipper pulls. And like I said, if you want, you can add 1 if you want. You don't have to have the 2. I don't see why you couldn't just add the 2. Now we're going to top stitch around the zipper on the edges. I'm going to put that away. And we're going to top stitch around the zipper window opening here. So all around this zipper window opening is where you're going to top stitch. So I'm going to change back to my regular foot. This is a really interesting way to do a zipper panel, I have to admit. That one. Where is it? Oh, it's right there. Now, if you don't want to back stitch, what you can do is leave long thread tails when you start. Then we'll pull them through to the back and tie them off. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to move these clips over a bit so I have the room to go by them. Okay, we're ready. So leaving long thread tails, I'm going to start, and I'm not going to back stitch. I'm just going to start stitching along. Now when you approach where those zipper pulls are, you will need to zip them out of the way. So with your needle down, lift up your presser foot, zip those zipper pulls out of the way. Pivot at the corner. I'm going to take just one little stitch here. It felt like it wasn't far enough. Now, if you're worried about angled stitches in the corners, what you can do is with your needle down, or sorry, not with your needle down, well, with your needle down, stop in the corner and reduce your stitch length to 0. Take 1 stitch, then return your stitch length back to the length you were using, and then can pivot and continue stitching, and do that at each corner, and that'll help prevent those angled stitches. Whoa, didn't want to do that. Sometimes if you just rock your needle back and forth, you can catch the bobbin, because that's what it is. It's just your bobbin not engaging and catching. So I'm coming back to where I started, and that clip is in the way. So now I'm going to continue stitching, and I'm going to stop right where I started, lift my needle up, leave long thread tails. Now I'm going to pull them through to the back to tie them off. Just going to cut them so they're all the same length, put them in a pair, and tie it off. Now you can use your needle and put these through to the seam if you want, so you can come out through the seam, which I will. I'll show you what I mean, and you could have tied them off there. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So remove some of your clips here. We'll take the threads, going through the hole, and I'm just going to thread my needle now with these threads. But first, I'm going to cut them again so they're all the same length. It's just going to make it easier for me. I'm going to thread this needle with all 4 threads. You can do this instead of tying it off first too. You can pull them through first. For some reason, all 4 don't want to go through with the needle. There we go. So I have them all through the needle, and then I'm going to take them, pulling that knot. So I pulled that knot through right now, and then I'm going to tie a knot inside here to help hold it inside, so that there's no threads, no nothing showing on the outside, because we're going to trim the threads, and naturally there's always a little tail if you don't get close enough when you cut it. So I'm going to trim this, and here I don't need to worry about cutting so close because I can leave little tails because I can tuck them in, and now they're all tucked in and there's no sign of any threads at all. Now what we're supposed to do is install our magnetic snap. However, I want to stitch first all the way around my panel, and the other thing is I see that my zipper is a little too long. It's sticking off out the edge here, so I'm just going to trim my zipper just a little bit. I'm going to trim it on the other side too if it needs it, and seal my zipper. So there we go, I've resealed it. Now my zipper is not sticking out the end. Just making sure everything's all lined up again. There we go. Now, instead of installing our magnetic snaps, I want to stitch all the way around the exterior of this zipper panel. So I want to stitch around it first because I'm worried when I put my magnetic snap in, I'm going to have a hard time getting around it. So I'm going to stitch around the entire exterior of the panel, and I'm going to start where I leave long thread tails again. And I'm just loosening off my presser foot tension because I don't want it to be too tight where it squishes my panel too much and it causes teeth marks on my zipper panel. So no back stitching, I'm just going to start stitching, and I'm using the lines, or I'm doing a straight line, sorry, across the zipper panel here so that I keep it straight, because you're going across this edge here where there is no edge. It's where the raw edges go. I'll show you what I mean. It's hard to explain, but you just go straight across. Make sure you're pivoting at each corner. And again, if you're worried about those angled stitches, you can reduce your stitch length and take one stitch. That's caught on my microphone. So here is what I'm talking about. When we're coming to this part where it's not folded in, I'm using the lines on the bed of my machine to make sure I keep it going straight. so that I keep an accurate seam allowance all the way around. And I'm just going to adjust a bit here because I just need to take the smallest little stitch So if you have to reduce your stitch length to get into the corners so that you keep an accurate seam allowance, definitely do that, or you can do what I did, which is maneuver it a bit. And I'm coming back to where I started. I'm stopping in the same spot I started. Long thread tails. And now I'm going to show you what we're going to do here with them. I'm not going to tie them off just yet. What I'm going to do is pull them through. Now you can backstitch if you want. The choice is really yours, but I just like this. It gives a nice clean look. So I'm going to do the same thing, pull them through between that seam, and then I'll tie them off once I get them in there. And then it's buried between that seam. These threads today don't want to cooperate. So there's two threads, or one thread. The two were on that. There's the two threads from one side going through, and now I'll thread the other two through. And this is where I was talking about here. I was keeping it even on my machine so that I could keep that a nice straight edge all the way across. All right, so I've got them both pulled through. Now I'm going to knot it, and that knot is going to be between those two seams. So it's not going to be on the outside, it'll be buried between those seams so nobody will see it. And I'm just knotting it. Be careful how tight you pull, you don't want to break any threads. And then what I'll do is take these threads, put them through the needle, and then I'm going to put the needle back through the vinyl, and I'm going to come out. If I can. There we go. I just want to pull it through. So I pull it through, pull it as tight as I can. And there we go. I've got the thread tails pulled through. You don't see them, you don't see the knot. Nothing will be seen in the finished bag. Oops, stepping on my cord. And that is how your panel looks so far. So there's no knots, no nothing showing all the way. Now what I'm going to do is install those magnetic snaps. And to do that, there's a measurement you need to make. So you'll want to use the measurement given in the pattern, and you're making it from this corner. So I'm going to go off camera, I'm going to make that mark, and then I will come back and we will continue on. So I just realized that I made a boo-boo, and that's okay because I'm going to show you how to fix it. So we can't install the magnetic snap. I totally forgot. I kept thinking I was doing just regular snaps and that I'd be able to put it in and have the snap on both sides, but we can't. But what we need to do here is unpick some of our stitches. So I'm going to start in the center here, and we're going to do the same thing we did where we pull our stitches through and nobody will ever know. So I'm going to unpick some of my stitches. I'm just going to go along and unpick them so I can get this end opened up. That was my fault. I'm really sorry about that. So I'm just unpicking some of my stitches. Don't get the thread cut, leave the threads long, so we're going to do what we did, what I was showing you with the needle, and pull them through and tie them off. I'm a little bit worried that my presser foot won't get around my magnetic snaps. So I'm just unpicking it a little bit of the ways down. And then I'll pull these threads through and I'll tie them off the same way I showed you just a moment ago. And it's a little bit tricky because of this corner here. Just be careful, you don't want to rip any materials or anything, so just take your time. So as you can see, I'm just pulling and it causes a loop, and I'm able to pull that thread. And I'll show you how I do the one side, and then I'll go back and I'll do the other side. That's why you should follow the pattern. Exactly. I keep saying follow the pattern, and I didn't. For some reason I had in my head that I was using snaps. All right, so I've unpicked it and I've got the mark made there for where I'm going to place my magnetic snap. So I'm going to use that mark and I'm going to put my magnetic snap in. I'm going to make the marks, and I'm putting the magnetic snap on the side of the zipper that's the wrong side of the zipper. That's where I'm putting the magnetic snap, on the same side that's the wrong side of the zipper. I'm very sorry about this, but we're saving it because we can pull our threads through and no one will ever know. All right, so now we have the snap installed on the one side. So now I want to pull these threads through to the right side, like to the same side, sorry. So I'm just pulling them through to the same side. Just like that. So I've pulled them through to the same side. Don't tie them off just yet. Now what we're going to do is start top stitching in where you stopped stitching previously. And you should be able to stitch right on top of those previous stitches, which I can see my previous stitches, so I'm going to take my time and stitch right on top of those previous stitches because I can see all those previous holes. So I'm just stitching right on top of them. Easy peasy. No one will ever know. Make sure you keep those threads out of the way. You don't want to stitch on top of them. And I'm back where I started. And look at that. Because of the way we stitched, No one will ever know that we had to open it up. Now pull that other thread through to the wrong side. So you have a thread here that we need to pull through. Just want to make sure. Then we're going to pull these all through to the wrong side, or through to the, sorry, not the wrong side, but through to the, between the seam, and tie them off just like I did previously. I was all excited and we had it all done all nicely. My lesson, it has been learned. First of all, make sure I remember what hardware I'm using and then follow the pattern. So I'm going to pull these all through to the middle. Going to cut them so they're the same length. I just want to do one side and then I'll stop the camera and I'll go fix everything else, so you don't need to see me sit here and fix this all. So I'll fix one, like I said, and then I'll go off and I will do the other side. Oh, I forgot a thread. There we go. So see how I pulled them through to the center here? I pulled them through that seam. Now put them in pairs and tie it off, and that'll put that knot, it'll bury that knot between the seam there. Just knot it a couple times. I say a couple and I'm still going. You don't have to pull the thread through like we did previously, you can just tie it off. And for some extra security, you can even add some fray stop or fray check in there if you want, to make sure that that doesn't come undone, or a dab of glue in there. Just get a little dab of glue in there and close it off. So we'll repeat that on this side. The other nice thing about this method is that, say you run out of bobbin thread while you're stitching a strap, you can do this same thing on your strap. Pull them through and tie it off. For some reason, some of these threads don't want to go through. Again, I'm sorry I did this. There we go. Tie them off. And then I'll do that on the other side. I'll open it up and tie it off. There we go. So I'm going to add some glue in there, and then I'm going to repeat that for the other side. I'm just going to make sure my threads are down so that they don't stick up. Any of the glue. There we go. And same thing here. I'm just making sure that the threads are pushed down and you don't see them. That knot. There we go. So I've added some glue in the center there. That'll help hold that knot, and that'll help hold that closed too along that edge, so nobody will ever see it. just like that, so it looks nice and clean, and we've restitched it. No one will ever know that we opened that up and stitched that. So I'm going to go fix the other side so I can install that magnetic snap, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. Again, I'm very sorry about that, but that's the quick fix, which is not really quick, but that's the quick way you can fix that so that nobody will ever know that you had to open that up, because as you can see, you can't tell where my stitches stopped and where my stitches started. So I'll fix that and then I will come back. All right, so we are all fixed. I have the magnetic snaps installed here on both ends, and I did it exactly as I showed you, where I pulled my threads through. Nobody will ever know. It's all nicely stitched. No one will ever know I had to do that. I'm very sorry about that, but I guess it's kind of good because I did teach you a new little technique maybe. Maybe it's something you haven't seen before, so I guess it is kind of good that you got to learn that. Moving right along, we need to grab our zipper overlay, and if you haven't already, please do cut out the center here. So there's that center area that you need to cut out for the zipper window. We're going to apply some double-sided tape to the edges of the zipper overlay on the wrong side of the zipper overlay. So on all the edges on the wrong side. Now we need to take one of our lining panels, remove the paper backing from the double-sided tape, and we're going to place this at the mark given in the pattern. So there's a measurement from the top of the panel, so this is G, down that you're going to make. So you want to make that mark, and then you want to place this overlay centered at that mark. Oop. Sticking to my hand, my double-sided tape. So I'm just going to fold the overlay in half so I get the half point. And then I'm lining it up with that mark I made, and I'm pressing it down so now it is held in place just like that. Now we're going to sew around the outer edge of the overlay, and I'm going to backstitch here because I'm using a black thread that will not be seen. However, you can pull your stitches through to the wrong side and tie them off if you want. The same way we did on that recessed zipper panel. Like I said, I'm using a thread that matches, so you won't see the back stitching as much or at all. Chew, excuse me. All right, so there it is. It's stitched in place, and I've stitched just around the outer edges of the zipper overlay. Now what we need to do is cut that area out. So we have to cut the zipper window area out. So with my seam ripper, I make a hole. Then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut down the center. And I'm going to use some duckbill scissors here because that will help me get close to the panel without actually cutting my zipper overlay. So it acts as a guard so I can get all the way around. And I do keep checking, especially on this area, because I don't want to cut it. And it doesn't have to be perfectly cut. You're just cutting it away to get that opening made. So now it looks like that, and we have our opening made. Now, put this to the side for now. We're going to grab out our zipper pockets. That thread doesn't want to come off. And our zipper pocket zipper. And again, this doesn't have a pull attached yet. We're going to attach it after. So I'm just going to stick my pull onto here. Now we need to sew the zipper to these panels. So take one of your pocket pieces and place it right sides up. You're going to align your zipper tape right side up to one of the long edges. Stitch this in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Then press this away from the zipper. So I'm just pressing it away from the zipper, and we're going to repeat that. Take your remaining zipper pocket piece and place it right sides up. Place the zipper right side up on top. Clip it in place. Oops. Sew it with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Clip any threads. Then I'm going to press this one away from the zipper panel as well, or from the zipper, sorry. Now we're going to add some double-sided tape to the long edges of our zipper. So just like that. Remove the paper backings. Then we need to center this onto the zipper window. Oh, but first, before we do that, we're going to add our pull. So I'm going to add my zipper pull using my zipper helper. So my zipper pull is on, I have it centered. Now I'm going to place this centered onto the zipper, press it down, just like that. So it's centered, the zipper teeth are centered in this zipper window, and the zipper panel is centered to, the zipper pocket is centered to my zipper overlay as well. So everything is nicely centered, it's pressed in place. I'm going to roll this down and place a clip here to help hold this in place for now. Now, what we do is, starting at the bottom, you're going to leave long thread tails, you're going to stitch across the bottom, and then you're going to stop. And there's a measurement you need to make note of for where you're starting and stopping. So leaving long thread tails. Oh, my thread is kind of all wonky here. Hang on. There we go. Got all twisted up top. So I'm going to put a pin in this one down here so that this doesn't come up under my machine and under the needle. So I'm going to start stitching. No back stitching. If you're like me though and you're using a thread that matches, you could backstitch. Long thread tails. Pull them through to the back. Tie them off. Just like we did with our zipper, recessed zipper panel. Be careful how tight you pull these because you could break your thread and then you've got to unpick everything like we did on the panel there and re-stitch it. This one you could just unpick the whole seam. Once you have these knotted, you can then cut the threads. So now what we need to do is take these clips off, and you're going to flip this down just like that. You're going to flip it down. And now where we stopped stitching, that's where you're starting. You'll come up, so across the top edge and back down, and stop where you started before. So I want to add this pin here just to keep everything in place. So I'm starting where I stopped previously, stitching up that side, across the top. I'm just moving my zipper pull out of the way, and back down this other side, stopping where I previously started. Pull the threads through to the back and tie them off. Oops. My hands aren't working. I think these threads are too long, that's why. Go. And I'm making a few knots just to make sure it's good and tied. You can add some fray stop or fray check. Now you want to trim the longer zipper panel. And I'm just leaving that pin in place so I can trim it. There we go. Trimming the longer zipper panel. And then move your lining out of the way, and we're going to sew the sides and bottom edge of the pocket. So we'll sew down one side, across the bottom, and up the other side of the pocket. So moving the lining out of the way. You can back stitch here. There we go. Trim your thread. And now we have a zipper pocket inside our bag. Very cute little zipper pocket. You could put, gum or whatever you want in there, but that's your zipper pocket all installed. So now I'm going to put this to the side because we need to work on our slip pocket. So grab your slip pocket pieces and your lining piece. So on one of the slip pocket pieces on the wrong side, there's a little rectangle you need to make. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink. There's a little rectangle you need to make, and the measurements are given in the pattern for where you need to make it and how big it needs to be. So you'll want to refer to the pattern for that. Once you have this rectangle made, you'll draw your line in the center. I usually don't do this, but for the tutorial purposes. So my rough center line, just like that. Now we're going to take this and we're going to clip it right sides together with the remaining lining panel. So you want it centered. And if you want to get the center marks, you can fold these in half and create creases. And then you just line up the creases. My little thing here is a mess and I'm having a hard time finding things. Okay, I'm going to add some pins here as well, just to help hold this in place. Now we're going to sew around this entire rectangle that we drew. So you're going to sew all the way around it. And you can back stitch it start and stop. So around the outer rectangle. Pivoting at the corners. Trim your threads. Now we need to cut down the center of that rectangle and also cut the little V's in the ends. So I'll show you what I mean. So if you look, I drew the little V's. I like to call it Y's because it looks like a Y. We need to cut those. So you're only cutting through the one layer of the slip pocket and one layer of the lining. You're not cutting anything else. And careful when you cut up into the corner that you don't clip your stitches. However, if you do, what you can do is re-stitch over those stitches, and I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So say you cut a stitch in this corner here. You'll come down here, start stitching right directly on top of the previous stitches, back stitch, so it locks in all these stitches and they don't come undone, your previous stitches. You'll back stitch, stitch up all the way around, across the side and down this long edge again and back stitch here. That locks in the previous stitches and that re-stitches that little box there so that you don't have any holes. Now what we need to do is we need to take the pocket and we need to go to our iron and we need to push it through to the wrong side, so they are wrong sides touching, and then press it so it's nice and flat. We want to get it as flat as we can, and what I like to do is finger press it like that first, and then I take it with my iron and I press it. But you'll push it through and then you'll press this with your iron. So I'm going to go do that now, and then I will come back and we will sew the slip pocket all together and continue with making our bag. So I've got it all pressed really nice and crisp, and I like to spritz it with a bit of water to really help get it nice and flat. So that's how it looks from the wrong side and the right side. Now what we need to do is top stitch all the way around this rectangle. And you can pull your thread tails to the back and tie them off if you want. I'm just back stitching. These dots are kind of making my eyes feel a little bit crazy. All right, so I've stitched that down all around that little rectangle box that we sewed. So that's our zipper, our slip pocket opening right now. Flip this to the wrong side, so you're looking at the wrong side of your lining panel, but you're seeing the right side of that slip pocket. Pin the two slip pocket pieces together. All right, so now that we have the top and sides and bottom pinned, we're going to move our lining main panel out of the way, and we're going to sew the tops sides and bottom using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So sew all the way around, moving your lining panel out of the way. Oops, forgot to put my foot back down. Get that later. Trim your threads. And we have a slip pocket now, all installed. Now we're ready to assemble our lining. So we're going to grab our two linings, our recessed zipper panel, and our zipper panel. So we need to take the wrong side of the recessed zipper panels and draw a line down from one long edge, and there's a measurement given in the pattern for that mark, and yeah, you can see that on mine. I've already done that. Now you're going to take your zipper panel and you're going to place it right sides up, and you're going to match the edge with the thinner width of the line that we drew with the long edge of the recessed zipper panel. And I just want to make sure I'm going to tell you how to do this correctly. And we're matching the center marks. So center it. So this thinner edge here on your recessed zipper panel is being lined up with the recessed zipper panel. I'm just going to put these together and do the mark. There we go. Okay, so you have this thinner edge here on your recessed zipper panel, or on your zipper panel. That's the edge that you're lining this up at. And the edge that has the thinner mark, so remember how we made a line? So see, my line is right here. That's the edge we're lining up of the recessed zipper panel to the zipper panel. I feel like it's like a tongue twister. Clip it in place. And then you're going to sew just this portion here of the zipper panel, that edge that has the raw edge. You're just sewing that portion using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And I'm sewing from the wrong side so I can see where I start and stop with no problem. And the nice thing is it takes you from corner to corner. So you'll know you're sewing it with an accurate seam allowance if you go from corner to corner. So if you see here where the cutouts are, you go from corner to corner there. And that's where I sewed, just there. Now I just want to see . Now, sorry, I know I have to keep reading, but I want to make sure I tell you how to do this correctly. You're going to take one of your main panels, and you're going to take one of the recessed zipper panel that you're working on right now, and you're going to place it so that it is right sides up. So your zippers are right sides up right now. That's what you want. And you're going to line up your center marks, clip it together all the way across. Now you're going to have a piece here of your zipper panel, your recessed zipper panel, that's not going to be clipped. You're only clipping the part that we just sewed and then the rest of the recessed zipper panel. So I'll show you in a second what I mean. Oh, that was hard to clip too. Okay, so as I was saying, you're clipping it so that the zipper, so there's my lining. My zipper panel is right sides up and my recessed zipper panel is wrong sides down. When I flip this up, there's these two ends where our magnetic snaps are that aren't clipped. The only part that's clipped is that little edge that looks like this, that's clipped up to the top, and then the rest of the recessed zipper panel. So see here, I'm trying to show you. So see how it's clipped, and then that part where I sewed is clipped. That's all you're clipping. And now we're going to sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern, and make sure you're not sewing over these folded edges here. So you can move that out of the way so you don't sew over it. Oh, my scissors were rubbing on the hand wheel. They're making a funny noise. So I'm moving that out of the way because I don't want to sew over it. Just keep it out of the way so you don't sew over it. A second row of stitches because I think I went a bit wonky. Yeah, I did. It's when we get to here where the bulk is that I kind of get a bit wonky. There we go. So that cleans it up a little bit. So there we have it. That's how it's all sewn. It's going to look like that. So I'll show you again once I clip that thread. So you see these two ends here? They're not sewn in, but the rest of the panel is sewn together. So that's how that looks. Now we're going to push the seam towards the main lining panel, and we're going to top stitch this whole area all the way across. And I'm finger pressing because I'm using a vinyl. So towards the main panel G, the lining panel, top stitch all the way across. My zipper pulls are dangly. I want to make sure they're out of the way. There we go. I've top stitched. So you're top stitching under your zipper panel here. Very interesting. All right, now we need to repeat that for the second side. So again, take your recessed zipper panel, or your recessed zipper panel, place it right sides up. Attach the recessed zipper panel, lining up your center marks, and you're going to sew just across that raw edge that we didn't sew previously. And look at how neat that looks. I really like that. That's really neat. So cool. So sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Oops. And I went from corner to corner. So from corner to corner, you can see from this corner to this corner is where I stitched. Take my lining. Now I'm going to place it right sides together with my lining. I'm going to move that slip pocket out of the way as well. I don't want to sew through that. Oh, I guess I can. It's not going to make a difference. And remember, we're not sewing through that folded edges of the zipper panel. I know I keep calling one a recessed zipper panel and one a zipper panel, but recessed zipper panel is what we're sewing right now. The zipper panel is the one that has the zipper. So we're going to stitch straight across using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And if you have a hard time with this because you know your foot is too big and it's having a hard time getting around all the bulk and everything, you can switch out to a zipper foot. That will help. And if you're worried about the bulk here at the top, because this does become a bit bulky here when I'm sewing because of the slip pocket there, the zipper panel, and everything else, don't put the slip pocket up in that seam. Tuck the slip pocket out of the way so that you're not sewing through that as well. You're just going to sew through the main panel, the zipper panel, and the recessed zipper panel. So you would just push the slip pocket down out of the way. Now we're going to flip this, and same thing, take all that bulk and push it down towards the main panel lining. And some threads are coming up through, so I'm going to pull them. There we go. And now I'm going to top stitch my main lining. So push that bulk down towards the main lining. I have dangly pulls, so I'm just making sure I've got them out of the way, making sure all the bulk is where it's supposed to be. Humper jumper will help you get through that bulk. Also, a walking foot, a bigger needle. You can use a seam whacker to whack the seams and hammer them so they're flat. But that's how that looks right now. So it's the ends here are not attached because they come up over the bag, but that's how that looks. So you have it just attached here in the center. Now we need to clip the sides and bottom edges. So move that zipper panel out of the way. Make sure you're paying special attention to where the seams are here, where the lining meets the recessed zipper panel. Pay special attention to when you're clipping that so that it has one continuous line when we stitch it together. Now, if you're making the other bag, the one without the recessed zipper panel, you're doing everything the same except you're not adding that recessed zipper panel. You're just sewing everything instead with a zipper tucked in there instead. So it's really quite easy. You just follow all these steps and then you add that zipper panel. So instead of sewing this, you'll be sewing a zipper here instead. So it's all the same thing. You're just sewing a zipper in that area instead of sewing this zipper panel here that comes down over the sides of the bag. So if you're doing the, I believe it's the tote, you will sew it all the same, everything from beginning to end. And then when you get to this part where we do the recessed zipper panel, you're doing a zipper in between here. So this will be a zipper right here rather than this panel. So now we're going to sew the sides and bottom edges. And again, I'm making sure that that area stays lined up. Bottom. We're actually almost done. It's going to be put this inside the exterior soon and then we'll be done. Now we need to box the corners, so we're going to open up our bottom seam here, and I'm going to press it all the way along the bottom. I'm just going to press it with my hands. I'm not going to go to my iron. Just going to press it with my nail. Pressing it open. You can take this to your iron and press it. I'm just pressing it with my hands. Like I said, I don't want to have to get up again. So press the side seam open and the bottom, and then line up the centers of those seams and clip it in place. Clip it in place all the way along. Repeat that for the other side. So the side seam here, right in the middle, you'll line it up with the middle seam on the bottom. Clip it in place, just like that. And then just give it a pull, and that'll help flatten it all out. And then we'll sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Oh, my presser foot is falling off. Make sure your seams stay open. I'm going to sew over that again, just right beside the seam, not right on top of it, just for some extra security. And again, right beside that seam. Now I'm going to trim that seam with my pinking shears. All right, now I'm going to sew this side seam. Sorry, I was just reading. I may have to pause and read and make sure that I'm doing this right. I don't want to give you the wrong directions. I'm just sewing these side seams at the top open, so just in the top seam so that they won't be seen later. You can press them open. You can use double-sided tape to help hold them open, whatever you prefer. I'm opening up my zipper so I can get this open nice and wide. I'm just going to pause the camera and read. I just want to make sure that I am giving you the correct instructions. Okay, yes, I am right on what I was going to say to do. Now we need to grab our exterior and our lining, and we're going to make sure our exterior is right sides out. We're going to fold the top edge of the exterior down to that line that we drew earlier, which will be right at the top of that interfacing there that we have. So using your double-sided tape, go all around the bag. Oh, wrong size of double-sided tape. Oopsie daisy. So using double-sided tape, I'm going to go around this top edge, all the way around the bag, around the top edge, and then I'm going to fold it down to meet that line we drew previously. So go all the way around. I probably should have went the other way. Feels a bit backwards to me going this way. So I've got the double-sided tape on the exterior. I'm going to place the double-sided tape on my lining now. And then we'll fold those edges down to meet that line. So that's that line that's on this recessed zipper panel. Remember, we drew those lines on both the zipper panels. So the raw edge will fold down to meet that line. All right. Just make sure my tape is stuck good before I pull it off. All right. So remove the paper backing. Oops, I hit my light. And then take your zipper panel, this is what we're working on right now, the recessed zipper panel, and fold it down to meet that line that we made all the way around. And this is where having that seam pressed open or sewn open is helpful. Remember that seam at the top, how I sewed it open? It's helpful because you've got some bulk there and you really want to make sure it's nice and flat. So this is going to be a drop-in lining. So it's pressed all the way around. So that's how that looks so far. I've pressed it down all the way around. I'm going to repeat that for the exterior. I was just making sure the exterior was stuck. Now, fold your exterior down to meet that line, and it may feel a bit wonky because you have the handles, but you can do it. If you need to use some clips to help hold everything in place, please feel free to use clips. I'm going to stand up so I get a better view because I'm having a hard time seeing. Keep pressing it all the way around to meet that line. So that's how that looks. Now, oh, I'm running over my cord from my microphone. Now what we need to do is tuck the lining into the exterior. And it doesn't really matter which way you go for this, like if your zipper pocket's on one side or the other, because both the sides of the exterior of the bag are the same. I'm going to add some more double-sided tape to help hold this in place because I don't want this to shift on me at all while I'm sewing it. So I'm going to add a clip there. No, that didn't really help. Oh, there we go. It's not really helping. So I'm going to add some double-sided tape all the way around just to make sure that it stays in place for me. And I'm not going right up to the top edge with the double-sided tape. I'm just sort of down from the top edge because I don't want the double-sided tape poking out in the bag when it's finished. I have had that happen before where I put the double-sided tape a little bit too high and it showed in the finished bag. It is washable, so if you wash the bag it does go away, but I don't always wash my bags before I use them. Okay, remove the paper backing. Out. punch my machine apparently. Now I'm going to go up again. Insert your lining, line up the side seams, add a clip, line up the second side seam, add a clip, make sure the tops are nice and even. This is going to give you great looking finish. If you make sure everything is all lined up, you can even find your centers and get those all lined up. So I can see my center here. Add some clips. If you have to adjust, adjust now. So that's what I'm doing. I see where something's a bit wonky and I'm adjusting as I'm adding my clips. And then I'll go through and I'll do the other side. I don't know where that went. There it is. So again, I'm going to find the centers because I can see the center marks here. I'm just loving how this looks even while I'm pinning it. I just think it looks so beautiful. I may keep this bag for myself. Nice size. I love that there's a zipper. Black and white. Classic. Always classic. Goes with any color that I have for a wallet. I don't have to worry about it, which I already have a black wallet because I like to have matching sets. All right, so I'm just going to read a little note. It says top stitching can be a bit tricky if you don't have a free arm on your machine or a cylinder arm machine. If you don't have either of those, you'll need to top stitch the bag from the lining side with the exterior against the bed of the machine. The lining and exterior will need to be lined up accurately at the top to help keep even top stitching. Take your time and keep checking as you sew to ensure your seam allowance is accurate. Now, I may be able to sew it this way. Yes, I can. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to make sure this is pressed down out of my way. So when I get to there, so it's not really a free arm machine, but I'm treating it like a free arm. I just made a noise because I'm thinking maybe I will do it the way Toby has in the pattern. Because when I get around here, I'm not sure how that's going to go. I'm going to add more clips. Let me see. Yeah, I think I can do it. I'm just going to see if I can do this. Yeah, I think I can. It's like the little engine that could. All right. So I'm doing it this way. going to take my time, but if you're doing it the way Toby said, your exterior will be against the bed of the machine and your lining will be up. So I'm just going to take my time doing it this way. And remember, you're not sewing through that zipper panel, so make sure that zipper panel is out of the way. Just maneuvering it like all the way around, getting around those corners and everything. Not impossible, but as you can see, I'm taking my time to sew around the entire bag. Making sure that zipper panel is also out of the way. And the nice thing is I've used a thread that matches my material at the top here. Oh my gosh, the top stitching is beautiful. Yay! The top stitching is so pretty. It's so good. I'm so happy. Now, another option, you could add some rivets here, which I think I might, but I won't do that now. I'll do that after when I'm done the tutorial. So now I'm just flattening everything out, getting everything all flat inside the bag. And I'm going to have to definitely press my bag and give it a good pressing because the interfacing is a bit wrinkled. And I'm just trying to push this in. So I'm just pushing the ends in. Oh my, yes, I love this. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think I'm keeping this one for myself. I love this bag. This is beautiful. Wow. I'm going to add some rivets up here just to help hold the straps in a bit more. I'll do that off camera. I'm not going to bother showing you. I will do that and you'll see that in my pictures when I finish my bag because that's not part of this. Now all we need to do is totally admire our bag. I'm just going to keep admiring my bag here. I'm so in love with it. Now what we need to do is get back to focusing and finish our bag. So now what we need to do is create our tassel. Oh, hi, Miss Bear. Hi. I think somebody is coming to tell me that she's wanting dinner soon. So we're going to take the tassel, and you'll have a piece that is cut as a square, and you're going to make a mark from the top down, and there's a measurement that you're going to do. So you'll make a mark and you'll draw that line. Then you'll cut these little tassels out using the measurement given in the pattern. I used a rotary cutter, and you're cutting just up to that line you made. So then what we'll do is I'm going to add a small dab of glue, and we're going to roll this up. So roll it up. Oh, don't play with that, Missy. Miss Bear. Nope. She's getting into everything. And you just take this and you slide it inside. So I'm going to add some glue. I gotta try and do this with one hand. Add some glue inside. And I'm just using Beacon 3-in-1 glue. Hey, chewing on everything. What are you doing? Getting into everything, eh? Getting into everything? Hey, getting into everything? Yeah, getting into everything, eh? This is Missy, for everybody who hasn't seen Missy before. This is my other baby. Oh, no, no, that's not for you. I thought that was a treat. That's not for you, sorry. Hey, you see yourself? That's you. So now I'm just going to install the screw. What's that? So we have to screw it in. Oh, 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 no, 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 don't do that. Oh, you're rubbing your face on that. Welcomed you up here. Hey? Hey. Can't pet you while I do this. Thank you for the kisses. I should really have my old screwdriver to do this because I can't get this screwed in. There we go. So I'm just screwing the screw in. You may have different hardware, different hardware than I do. I may need to get my husband to screw this in when he gets home. Yeah, I can't do that. What? Hey, what? Thank you. Giving lots of kisses, eh? Lots of kisses. Oh, don't touch the computer. Don't touch the computer. No, 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 no. You'll stop the recording. You'll stop the recording. Yeah, I'm going to have to get my husband to screw that in for me when he gets home. So I've got it partially done. Then what you do is you take this. Hey, don't go getting into my stuff. And you will probably need to get a chain. I'm not going to use a chain here. I'm going to, what are you doing? Clip it on to my handle because I don't have a chain, I don't think. And you wrap it around your handle. Oh, zoom tight. curious about what this is, eh? I'm gonna have to pause the camera and see if I do have a chain. I thought this would be able to fit all the way around, but it doesn't, so I'm going to have to go see if I have a chain that I can clip this to. But this just gets clipped like this to our handle for some extra bling. It gets clipped to the handle for the extra bling. So I'm just going to pause the camera and see if I can find a chain that is in this hardware finish. And if I can, then I will come back and we will attach it. So I'll be right back. All right, so I was able to find a chain, and I just kind of hacked off a piece of another chain that I had in this gunmetal finish. I know I used a matte black for the other hardware, but I don't have a matte black for this tassel, so it's fine. It still looks really pretty. Anyways, so that's how it looks, and I was able to finish screwing in that screw as well. So you just attach it, you wrap it around your handle, you can wear it on either handle. You could even, if you have a big enough zipper pull, add it to your zipper pull. It's nice. You could even use this instead for your keys. You can put it on your keychain if you prefer. You just have a nice little extra decoration on your bag. So there it is. Your Reena Handheld Bag by Tobistylx is all complete. You're ready to take it out and show it off to the world. But before you do, don't forget to take lots of photos and share them on social media, and use the hashtags given in the pattern so we can all find your beautiful bags. Thank you for sewing with me. I hope you picked up lots of tips and tricks along the way. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye and happy sewing.